So, Apex Legends, the game everyone's talking about. The game where all you hear is, that game is so good, holy shit. The game that has garnered over 10 million downloads thus far and soared to the front page of Twitch overnight. The game had relatively no marketing pre-release, no lofty trailer campaigns or convoluted pre-order mechanisms. It just sort of launched, and there it was. I did a first impressions video for it, and I may end up doing a tips video once I am good enough, that is, and a full review later on for sure. But right now, I want to make the case that the game is so popular that it is actually a bad thing. Now, I know what you're thinking. Upper Echelon is so negative all the time. Why can't he just say positive things and blah blah fucking blah? Well, the game is fun to play. For all intent and purpose, it's good. It's a very good game. I'll go so far as to say it's great, sure, whatever. But its soaring popularity is what could turn into a very bad thing very quickly. I'm not arguing flaws in game design. I'm not disputing some of the monumentally convenient changes that Apex Legends has made, which improve on the existing Battle Royale genre and clearly are helping to capture a wide audience. I'm simply trying to highlight an area of concern which is ever present nowadays. And should we let our guard down, hell, even if we don't let our guard down, sometimes it makes no difference, but if we are lulled into a false sense of security and complacency, the AAA industry will just deteriorate further. Apex Legends is developed by Respawn and subsequently published by EA. It's a free-to-play game, but makes up for that lack of an upfront entry cost by heavily monetizing through skins and loot boxes. It's a lot easier to stomach a microtransaction system like that when the game is free. Some may argue loot boxes have no place ever in the industry, seeing as they have been legally declared gambling in many regions, and gambling has a stricter age limitation than gaming, yet somehow loot boxes are still allowed, but regardless, that whole debate is inconsequential right now. The part that matters is EA. EA, yeah, I know I talk about them all the time, but there is a reason for that. EA is basically the worst. They have consistently bastardized beloved franchises and pushed the envelope further than pretty much any other publisher in the entire industry with regards to invasive and predatory monetization models, all the way from FIFA to Battlefront 2. Apex Legends is a breath of fresh air, one would think. Being free to play with high accessibility and a decent reward payout ratio, allowing for additional characters to be earned rather quickly, it does not feel like it should pose any sort of problem, because it itself is a very good thing right now. But the problem it poses is the effect it will have on EA's bottom line and forward-looking attitude. EA was taking an absolute beating during late 2018 and early 2019. It all started even as far back as 2017, really, when the pot truly boiled over, but the basic summary is that they have finally been seeing real ramifications after their consistently worse practices. Because of all this, they needed a blockbuster, a big win, something to rally from and point to as a success after repeatedly underperforming titles and estimates. That blockbuster is Apex Legends. The thing about EA, though, is that they have a long and rich love affair with loot boxes as a concept. Since Apex Legends is free and garnering massive popularity, the loot boxes it sells will be a phenomenal portion of quarterly revenue for EA, and yet another powerful signal that the loot box concept is their ticket to year-over-year profit margin increases. If you look at the recent stock analysis for EA as well, it's clear that the explosion of success for Apex Legends has already inspired investors yet again, which, oddly enough, is the worst possible thing that could have happened for gamers at large. The structure of these companies is convoluted and disgusting. Sure, they can explain it away by saying, that's just capitalism, but the truth is, it's a bit further than just that. As these companies, with EA as a frontrunner among them, rake in literally billions from excessive monetization, they are pressured to perpetually increase those numbers. Here's where a lot of truly brain-dead gamers will say, but inflation, video games cost more to develop, they need to add microtransactions and loot boxes, and they should also up the price of games to $80 or whatever else. Anyone you know who says things like that, don't associate with them anymore, you'll probably lose brain cells. For starters, the developers don't get that money. The CEOs and the CFOs and whatever other executives in the glass office 56 floors above the real artists who actually work on the game, they get that money. Second, more money is spent now on marketing games than ever before, and I would assert that it's quite literally being just thrown away in a lot of circumstances because much of it is aimed at outdated, underperforming, or poorly optimized methods that are extremely overpriced. Third, the available market to tap into has grown substantially, resulting in a much larger number of potential consumers. And lastly, the underlying goal of these companies, held accountable by a literal fiduciary responsibility to do this, is invest as little as possible into developing a product that makes as much as possible. Apex Legends is about to set a new bar for EA as a publisher, and that bar is going to be set to such a height as to permanently dial up their already borderline practices to 11. EA, with their codependent relationship to loot boxes, have been pushed back time and time again over the past year or so, but now they are regaining more ground than ever using the very mechanism gamers have worked so hard to fight against. EA now owns one of the most popular games on the planet, at least for right now, and through one of the most unsavory mechanisms in existence is likely about to earn more revenue from it than they have ever seen before from a single title in their entire history. Now, I say one of the most unsavory mechanisms because I can directly recall a time when none of this monetization even existed, a time when you bought a game and it was a full game. Then, after that, there was DLC, further content sold independently, which didn't really feel all that bad. But then came on-disc DLC. That's where it became obvious something was wrong. How was a game launching with DLC already made and on the disc that was staggered to release later down the line for an additional charge? Why wasn't it part of the actual product? Still though, not the end of the world, at least not completely. Except, more was to come. Next up was the degradation of release day practices and the introduction of digital pre-orders. Now the industry was expecting gamers to pay full price for a game before even knowing what they were going to get. Factor in on top of that the intentionally confusing special editions, designed to play on user FOMO, or fear of missing out, to sell a bunch of trashy gimmicks for double or even triple the cost. Then came the microtransactions, cutting out tiny bits of content or even selling limited or permanent boosts for additional price tags. It started mostly with cosmetics, but soon that was gone too, and it was direct in-game altering items. And then, after that, the loot boxes, where the concept of gambling was meshed with a market ripe with underage minds that would be hyper-susceptible. All this makes no mention of the other various monetization models that are interspersed between those. You have things like selling beta access or straight up selling early access to games on certain platforms. It really is a consistently devolving practice. Now, I say that loot boxes are the pinnacle of unsavory monetization because they are the latest in a long line of creeping steps that have been taken with dubious intention. Yes, Apex Legends is free. Yes, that makes it easier to tolerate the extremely high skin price tags, for instance. And yes, it also makes us more apt to look over the inclusion of loot boxes, especially if they layer some free ones in to keep us all happy. But the bottom line is that EA has now successfully found a way to implement their favorite monetization model without the backlash, which is about to boost their earnings through the roof, and future releases, even at the AAA level with $60 price tags, will somehow need to keep increasing quarter over quarter, year over year. Apex Legends is a great game, but with even a rudimentary analysis, it's obvious the game is a low development cost project. It's one map, a handful of classes, no story, no campaign, a single mode, in a sandbox with a pretty small amount of loot options. And yet, it's about to make EA more money than most any other game they've ever produced, directly because of popularity and loot boxes. What's the takeaway? Honestly, there's a lot of takeaways, but mine is, it's not the case that there is an infinite supply of low-cost trends always spinning up consistently that have the insane potential user base of Battle Royale. EA has spiked right into a dead end, but because of their overarching financial obligations, they must continually attempt to rise, never fall. To rise above what Apex Legends is now propping up, they will need to increase their progressive monetization of future releases, and they now have also gotten another taste of that sweet, sweet loot box revenue. Apex Legends has an interesting future. How they shape the esports presence will certainly be something to watch, and in a similar way to Fortnite, the argument could be made that the massive popularity spike that Apex has already seen will stifle the release of similar titles for months to come. An alternative factor to consider is the inevitable prioritization which will be placed upon Apex by both Respawn and EA for future months. With Respawn slated to release 2 more fully fleshed out games in the coming year alone, will those games get the resources they need to be fully polished and complete? Because of the already well-established responsibility of EA to maximize profits, everybody knows this, and with Apex ascending to truly unbelievable heights right now, subtracting from the development of the new single-player Star Wars game, for instance, to add further content into Apex, especially content that can be sold and monetized, would be a more effective method of raising the quarterly report. For a good example, look at Fortnite and the way that Fortnite Battle Royale eclipsed Fortnite Save the World. They deprioritized the Save the World mode and stopped most of the further development on that, even though the Battle Royale mode was in fact an afterthought and developed long after, when there had been years of prior development on the Save the World mode. So it can eclipse other content because of its growing popularity and its success. The argument is not that Apex itself is bad. The argument is that the conclusions EA will draw as a result of the massive success that Apex Legends has seen will be detrimental to future releases, not to mention the bar they have now set and its impact on both them and other larger publishers. Had Fortnite been produced by a major AAA publisher, a similar situation would have occurred, but that was not quite the case. Epic Games owes almost its entire current position to the Battle Royale mode, and instead of Fortnite spiking them to a height they could not maintain from a baseline that was already nearly unsustainable, it simply catapulted them to a currently competitive position within the entire industry. The takeaway is that Apex is great, but don't forget who made it and why they made it, and what impact it will have on future games. But yeah, that's all for today though. Not much more to say really. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. We have esports merch, gaming forums, Facebook group, Discord server, and some more stuff as well, but I'll cut it there and I'll stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching and have a nice night.